He went there essentially in order to, I think, gain self-confidence in himself. Okay. This, I think, had nothing to do, it should have nothing to do with Chandrayaan or the process of sending out and so on. So it is a completely individual thing. Whether you accept it or not is our own judgment here. Whether it becomes actually a symbol of, well, you see, I'm comfortable with both. Let us all be comfortable with both. That would be wrong. Because then you are intruding on each other's territory. That would not be correct. Okay. When I asked Radhakrishnan, he said, I just wanted to get my mind clear, and the only way I can do that. Because suppose rather than do that, I sit there and meditate. Would you accept that? So there are thin lines here. Meditation is even thought of collecting your neural system in a manner that become actually not too spiky and so on. There are behavioral neurology that tells you that things like making yoga or some of these things might actually benefit you personally. For him, it was a personal benefit as an individual. But the point is taken. Are you therefore setting an example? Okay. Could you have gone without your, letting people know or getting your dharmans and so on along with you and so that's a different thing. Could you not have done the same thing at home? Nobody will ask you. So are you therefore exemplifying this dichotomy? Somehow you brought a dichotomy together, when I'm comfortable with that. That, I think you are absolutely correct. And I agree with that point that you are really making. Okay? Because you can't set an example and show off that I am doing this and so. That would be inappropriate. The second thing about what's the role of sociologists, see, there's a lot of things that have happened because of scientific development, technical development and so on. One issue that I just talked about was the human genome system. Okay. Clearly, science tells you we are all the same. And yet, when you say caste system or discrimination or segregation or that kind of a thing, it is a social construct. It is not a scientific construct. The other thing, today we have a problem because of what has happened in technology, overuse of certain kinds of materials and so on. We are making the climate change. Climate change would really mean a lot of hardship to a very significant number of people. Eventually for all of us, because if it is projected based on whatever numbers you choose, regardless of whether you are overdoing it or underdoing it, it's clear that climate change leads to sea level rise. I want to bring this point because it is no longer just a point for gossip. Maldives, the president of Maldives wanted to buy lots of property in the outback region of Australia, saying, we don't know what's going to happen 50 years from now. We'll all be completely finished, demolished. So maybe I can transport all of our people and have a new Maldives, no longer a seafaring nation. Now look at the sociology of this one. Even if it is not right, what it tells you right away is it affects the life of people in a manner that we need to control aspects of technological overuse. I'm concerned, personally as a scientist I'm concerned about the excessive use of nuclear energy in India at the cost of alternate possibilities. We're not doing anything about it. Nuclear energy can be safe. No, I'm not an anti-nuclear guy. What I'm saying is one over the other is what is happening, and that is happening for not scientific reasons. It's happening clearly for non-scientific reasons. Trade, sociology, connection between nations and so on. So somebody has to think about it. And so many people can do this. There is also, you do all what they call Monday morning quarterbacking. After the effect, it's an American phrase, Sunday, you do all the football match and so on. Monday morning, you sit down with the coffee and say, if only he had done that. I would be the quarterback. If I were the quarterback, I would have done well. I'm sure you're going to do this Sunday. and India plays Pakistan. Now, but time is up.
No. Yeah. Yeah.
So Monday morning quarterback, see, people are talking about pre-revolution was a tragedy. Okay, was it a tragedy? We need to think about that. Had it actually had all this bad effect that you are talking about, how do you weigh the good versus the bad? What can you give as mechanisms for this? Okay. So sociologists will actually work as antennae. Poets are antennae. They actually think about what's going to happen in the future and so on. I think the Prime Minister of Maldives was one such. Is that just going to happen? What did I think about this? We need advice. We need counsel. We also need shackles. And that's important. Because you don't have such a, because you're analyzing things on behalf of the society at large. You can also predict things. If it goes this way and so on. If we didn't do that, we would not have reservation policy in India. We wouldn't have affirmative action. They came not because of science, they came because of societal reasons.
So,
You can introduce yourself, so sir knows a little bit of this line.
I'm Jyotsna and I'm in second year of public policy and governance. So my question is, it's starting from a postulate that behavioral neurology is shaped up by the sociological construct that a person faces. So in sciences we have a completely separate branch called metaphysics. There we deal about the probable nature of any entity that is being studied. So I read one of the articles by Jayant Narlikar, Dr. Jayant Narlikar. It said, what I drew from that our mind exists in two realities. When one reality is a bit down, the other one of what we have been thinking of, it gains precedence and it overshadows the earlier one, and then our mind enters into that state. So with reference to this nuclear deterrent policy, I would like to ask this thing, that while India claims that it is not following this nuclear thing and it has signed this anti-nuclear thing, but still if somewhere in mind it would be feeling that no, had we have a nuclear thing, so that would have safeguarded our boundaries much efficiently against the neighbors or some perpetrators. So the question is all about this metaphysics thing. What do you feel on this?
I don't completely buy the Narlikar argument that you have two states of mind or two reality minds and so on. The mind is a mind. And you need, what he talks about is on certain issues or certain moments you might want to think a little more philosophical. And in some instances you really become far more realistic and what can I do? As problem on hand, I must have some kind of a solution and so on. It's also thought of as what physicists also call as heuristic.
Yeah.
Okay. Now heuristic it's an empirical thing. I don't know what else to do. Let me just put up an equation and see how it works and so on. It may work, it may not work. So that's the kind of an argument that he has. But going to the nuclear thing and so on, the argument is far more sociological than anything else. That is, Dr. Gopalakrishnan, who used to be the chair of the Atomic Energy Commission, Regulatory Commission, also Dr. Kalam, have argued that isn't it time that we don't any longer think in terms of uranium? We have other elements available in India, thorium. Okay, we have the technology that needs to be enhanced, developed a little better. So you have what you may call as pretty much of a supply which is completely internal. Okay. Then the argument, the other is more a political argument, that I will come, I'll put up the machine, the reactor, you people will run the reactor. Okay. If something goes wrong, the public will sue the guy who's running the reactor, not the guy who made the reactor. This is the argument that has been going on, and we seem to have signed the agreement that if something goes wrong with the reactor, the man who runs the reactor is responsible. Well, the reactor company can, or they can go and sue the manufacturer. There is some disconnect in here.
But sir, this Dr. Radhakrishnan thing, wouldn't his mind be existing in that metaphysical thing? That on one hand, he is the chief of ISRO, but simultaneously, somewhere in his mind, he is feeling that no, this thing, the traditional thing, and all the beliefs in the belief system that he has been following till now.
No, it has not overcome. One did not override the other. Had he been truly in your metaphysical manner, which is incidentally not all that scientific, it's philosophical. In that, if it had overridden the scientific task before him, he might not even have. Okay. On the other hand, the scientific problem solving, that part of the his mind was override the spiritual part of it. He might not have gone at all.
Asim? I'm Asim. I work for the public policy department. I just wanted to put two very powerful juxtaposed two very powerful discourses. One is the discourse of science, which you started by saying the temples of modern India. Anything which comes in the way of creating temples of modern India can be compromised because the nation is the first priority. That's a very powerful discourse. You have big dams in that name, even the interlinking of rivers which they were talking about. Then the other that falls into this particular way of thinking. The other very powerful discourse is about religion and nationalism, which is getting more and more ascendance in the last few years. And here I'm talking specifically about majoritarianism as a religion or Hindutva as an idea of religion. I'm not claiming that Hindutva is a religion, Hindutva is an idea of religion. So that's also a very powerful discourse. And somewhere you see that they intersect somewhere. People who support majoritarian nationalism are also the people who support that kind of rationality in the hegemonic discourse of nation first through economic growth. So how do we understand, which to me at least sounds a contradiction. So how do we understand this two powerful discourses intersecting each other?
It's an artifice. It is an artifice and it's actually being thrust on us.
Okay.
But I think that's, we should oppose it. Oppose it for both scientific reasons and for sociological reasons. The Hindutva ideology dictating what should happen as a national policy is unacceptable. It cannot be accepted. Then how is it any different from ISIS? The Islamic, ISIS, somebody call it ISIS and so on. Or when Zia switched the Pakistan policy, national way of governance from earlier on into it will become an Islamic state. So there are dangers in that. And I worry, I certainly worry, and I think, in fact, the idea that today the so-called, the new model of the Planning Commission doesn't have scientists and sociologists worries me. The one lone scientist there is Dr. V.K. Saraswat, the DRDO chief at one time, and so on. He's a reasonable man. But compare that with the kind of intellectuals and people, knowledge and wisdom. Now, it already appears to be a given. Everybody says very nice to have, someone like Modi because he is stopping corruption, he's doing this, that, and so on. That's a hard argument. You are also buying along with that a philosophical system that will not do India good. I could extend the same thing. While I have all my sympathy, and if I had a vote in Delhi, I would have voted for him. Aam Aadmi Party. But I am concerned, what is their policy going to be? Okay, who are the people who are going to... See, this is where I think the earlier government, despite all their problems and so on, had good ecumenical mix of sociologists, economists, scientists. Vivek Devrai is one more, I think, in the...
Economist.
yeah, he's an economist. So
I'm
this,
an economist.
I agree with you, because I think, not only do I agree with you, I think we have to argue about this. In fact, PISS should argue about this thing, that majoritarianism shall not be the policy for the future of the country. It will have to be a considered sign.
That is one, majoritarianism is one thing, but I'm trying to also
I think that go along with that.
imagine
Yes.
that it's not even the, if you see the history of science and technology, I'm not a scientist, but I'm just a cursory interested in that. So the way the science and technology discourse have developed, they have a complete faith that, for instance, big dam can solve this problem. Interlinking of the rivers can solve the water problem. So there is a hegemonic faith in that kind of a science. But the people who subscribe to this science are also having, within quotes, irrational behavior which is thrown by the Hindutva ideology. So I'm saying this intersection is very puzzling. On one hand, you treat people with antibiotics and all, and on the other hand, you go and feed Ganesha the doodh. So this intersection, and how has this society has thrown up this kind of a very puzzling configuration, which that's what I was trying to, I fail to understand this.
You could actually extend this, Professor Prakash, to across the world. It seems to me, while we are particularly concerned about India,
Yeah, I don't know about
okay,
that.
but you notice now it's also happening. Pankaj Mishra has a beautiful book on this one. There are 2 books he has written. One that is the second one that I strongly recommend. He's a wonderful writer, sociology writer. It's called The Collapse of the Empire. How some of these non-secular, how did, for example, militant Islam come about? It's not just because of the oil. It's also because you broke my tradition. Various very interesting argument that he has to make. So it appears to be a global thing, post-colonial. I have no answer because I am not a sociologist. But some of you people who have more knowledge would find that. But there's no consolation saying it's a global thing, because I am concerned that the majoritarian opinion, if it also turns out to be in synchrony with the Hindutva thing, you have lost a major important component of success of India.
Anybody else?
Good spoken word.
Sure, any other questions?